So quickly, let me share my screen, and then I can start from there. Before then, my name is Kingsford Osti from EBITS, and I'll be taking us through, or we will all be learning how to develop a secure USSD system for voting. Kindly give me a few seconds to set this up. Right. So before we start, I would want to show the application. Actually, I had only 2 days to work on this, though I should have started earlier, but then things kept on coming, so I just had to start late. So I started on Tuesday, so you may find some hitches in there. Please don't beat me. I'm still your guy. All right, so let's log in, and then this is the entire application. So we have the dashboard where we have active elections, total candidates, total positions, and then total voters. And then you can filter these. You can use these filters to filter the data here and then the chart here as well. So you can filter by positions, and then the chart will show accordingly. Can filter. So with secretaries, we have just one person voted for, and then we create elections here by default. What I did previously was that you create the election, and then a USSD code will be assigned for that particular election. Uh, so that is in code. However, I just had to replace the USSD with this particular one for the testing. So I will test very soon. I have my device connected. We can view elections, we can edit elections, we can delete elections, and then we have the positions here. So this is where we actually create the positions. And then, so let's say, let me just add another position. Let's say position new. So now we have a new position, and then we can add candidates to this position. So new candidates here. Yeah, we can add images as well. I had to ignore that or comment that out for now because I didn't have time to fix a bug that was coming or that was showing as a result of the image upload. And then once we have our candidates, we can possibly start voting. But then before then, you would have to register each voter on the system for a particular election. This is done so that like we are for the purpose of we having a more secure voting system, we will definitely need to register our voters so that whenever someone dials, then the person is not a registered voter, the person wouldn't be allowed to vote. So currently I have my phone number in there for the voting, and hopefully it should work. So let's go to the device and then dial the USSD for that particular election, which is welcome to SRC election 2024, which is the name of the election. And then I have the positions here. So kindly select a category to start voting. And we also have this powered by EBITS down there. So let's say we select the president, and then we are presented with the people who stood for president. So let's just give Kofi Men a vote. So we will be asked if we want to continue to vote for Kofi Men for president. We can just go back to the candidate selection or go back to the position selection. So now let's go ahead and give Kofi Men the vote he needs. So yes. And then now it says you can continue, and then you have 3 positions remaining. As in, you have 3 positions you can vote remaining. When you hit on that, hopefully, I haven't tested this, but hopefully, yes. So when you hit on that, it takes you to the welcome page again. However, this time, you will be presented with only the positions you can vote in, because we've already voted someone for president. So let's get the new position we just created and then vote for the new candidates there. And then now we have 2 positions remaining, so we can exit, and then it will tell us we are thanking us for exercising our right, and then we still have 2 positions to vote that we may dial again at any time between now and the closing date for the elections. So basically, application, and then when we go to the dashboard, we should be able to see all the votes that I casted. So let me filter by position to president, and I have Kofi Menu here. I think I voted for a new position here. And then I also have the new candidates, which I just created. So that's it. It's just a minimal application which handles voting. So basically that's it. And we are going to delve into it and how to develop such a system. Right. So before we start, let's take a look at something here on Akasel's USSD documentations. So the USSD service, or the USSD server for Akasel, basically sends this data as the request body to our external application, and then it also expects this response from our external application. So you see we have session ID, which is generated by the USSD server. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right. Then we have the user ID, which is generated by Akasel. And then this is also sent by Akasel, indicating whether the request is new or not. And then the MSISDN, which is basically the phone number of the person dialing. Then the user data is whatever the user types into either while dialing the code from the start or while replying to a prompt. That is the user data. And then the network is also, I'm sure it's sent by Akasel. I haven't really tested that out, but what I do is, even without the request parameter, I'm still able to get things done. So I will check on that later. And then it expects us to send this back to Akasel's platform. So Akasel will dispatch this message to this particular number that's dialed and use the account we have on Akasel's platform, and then also use the session generated for that particular request. So basically, that's it. The continue session here indicates whether we want to send, whether we want to end the session or continue, as in end the USSD session or continue the session. So, for example, if someone dials star 928 star 1, a new session is started, and then when the response from our external system comes or is received by RSL, and then continue session is false, it means there shouldn't be any prompts for the person to type in any data again to send. So you probably have OK, as in the button OK to press on. But then when it's true, then it means the person will be given a space to enter another value, which will be sent back to Excel, then sent to the external system to process. So basically, that's it for how the USSD works. And what I've done so far is I have already set up the project, and then I have done the database parts, and I have also done the views. So what we are currently going to actually work on is the USSD part. So I'll just take you through a very quick one with the database migrations and then the models and then how they are related. And then we can start getting our hands dirty on the these four migrations are basically from Laravel. I'm using Laravel 10. So these are from Laravel. So my migration started from here, and this is it. So I have the elections table, which has the name, the start date, and end date, and then some timestamps, and then the voters table, which will have the name. At some point in time, I realized I needed to add the election ID in the voters table, so I did that here. So now on the positions table, where we have the name of the position and then the election ID, which represents the particular election the position is for, because you can have multiple elections. And I believe you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
All right, all right. I muted my microphone, so my speaker, so I thought you had spoken. All right. Then we also have um, we also had to set the name of the position to make it unique per election, just so we don't have two positions called president, and then when people are now voting, they will be confused as to which one is the actual president's position we should vote for. So this is handled in the database. However, I am not sure I handled that in code as in during validation, but it's handled in the database and will possibly throw an error. And then we have the candidates table where we have their name, the election they are candidates for, and then the position ID. And then, yes, so the positions they are related to. That is it. And then we have the votes table which records the votes for the individual voters. So we have the voter ID, which we have already created here. So we have the voter ID, the election, the candidate's ID, and then the position the person voted for. So we also made sure that you can only vote, a voter can only vote once per election per position. So you can only vote once for the president's position. You can only vote once for the treasurer position. Fortunately, I handled that in code as well. And then I also needed to add the USSD code to the elections, the elections table, which I did. And then I added the elections ID, which I have already talked about. And then this is for the media library I'm using. It's called, I think it's Spashi or Spati. I don't know how you people call it, but I think it's Spashi Laravel media library also. So you can also check that out. And now let's quickly have take a look at models. So let's start with the election. So election has many candidates, has many positions, it has many votes. And then I also created a scope for an ongoing election, which actually checks the start dates and end dates. It checks to see whether the date now, as in now, is between the start date and end date, then it means it's an ongoing election. Then we have the candidates, which belongs to an election and also belongs to a position. The candidate can also have votes. And then this register media collections is actually for the Spashi Media Library, which registers this model to be able to use the media library. So it has interacts with media, which actually does the job of letting it use the media library. It also has register media collections. In this case, we have created an images media collection, and then we only accept single files. So you can do, I think you can do this, or as in the model, then add media from. So you can have add media from request, and then you just supply the name of the file, the key for the file request. And then because we are already using this media collection, it will just pick it from there, or else you would have to add to media collection and then define the collection there. And that's why this is here. So with that, we go to the positions, and position belongs to elections, and also position has many candidates. The user is basically default. We go to voter, and then we have the one for, we have voter has many votes, and then a voter also belongs to an election, and then the votes itself belongs to a voter, and then it also belongs to an election. Of course, some of these things may just be duplicates in some way, but like I said, I had limited time to work on this, so I just left some things there. And then we have the vote being belonging to a candidate. Right. So now we can start with our work. And the first thing we are going to do is we are going to create our controller, which is going to be the main entry point for the USSD request. So we do PHP artisan make controller, and let's just name it USSD session controller. And that should be here. Right. So let's just use the invoke method, because I'm sure this the only thing we are going to put in here. And then we will have a request. And then before then, we can just test it out. Then just do request or, and then let's quickly create a route for that in the API routes file. So you can have routes. It's going to be a post request, and let's do handle USSD session, and let's just call our controller USSD session controller. And we don't need to call, we don't need to call the method, any method, because we are using the invoke method here. And then let's quickly try that out using Postman. I have already set that up here. So let me just use my phone number. And then hopefully we should be able to get it going. Right. And now we have details here. And that is what we have here. Remember the request I talked about. So this is the request, and this is it. Then we are just spitting it out on the page. So now let's go a step further and then store that in a body called request body, in a variable called request body. So request all, and then we'll have to call another service to handle the request. Okay, so in that, let's quickly create a service. I think I have a services for that, right? So let's quickly create a service and call that USSD session service. And then in that, let's create a public function, calling it, let's say, handle USSD session, which will pick our request data. So let's do request body here. And then we can call, before then, let's just inject it here. So we have USSD session service, USSD session service. So we can do USSD session service handle USSD session, and then we pass in our request body. Right. However, okay, so before then, let's just try this out here, and we should have a request body working as should. Right. Now, what we can do is that most of the time, we would return something from this handle USSD session method, and then it's supposed to be handled here in the session controller and then sent back to ArcSL. So we would let's put this into a variable, and then we'll say return response, or you can just do it here. Okay, so that's one of the beauty of using an ID. Right. So now that we have this, let's try returning what Accessel wants from our external system, which is this right here. So let me okay, let me just copy this and then remodel it. So I will have this and then that. Right. So it's expecting the session ID, the user ID, the phone number, the message, and then whether to continue session. Now we would notice that the session ID here is the same thing as the session ID it expects from us. The user ID is the same thing, and then the phone number is the same thing. So what we can do is we can just use what we have in the request body, since it's the same thing coming to us. So we can just do session ID this way, and then we can also do request body user ID, and then request body MSISDN, and then now our message. So we can just say, okay, I think this is fine, or welcome to voting, or welcome to my votes. That is what I call the system, and whether to continue session or not. So let's quickly try that and see, and then we would realize that we have it here. So session ID, user ID, MSISDN, which is the phone number, and now we have our message, and then whether to continue session. So this message is going to be the message that will be shown to the user on the person's device. So that's it. Now, all right, so we can continue from here, and then because we are going to return this multiple times, in here, I would create a private function, not in there. It looks my machine is running slow. So I would create a private function called response, and then I will return this in there. And because we are going to use request body, I can just pass in request body, and then the message can also be passed in like that, and then whether to continue session also passed in. So these are kind of required. So we have the message, and then the continue session, and then response is returning an array. So let me just do that. Right. So now anytime we can just do this response, and then we pass in the request body, and then we pass in our message, and then we pass in whether to continue session or not, and then it should work for us. Right. So now let's start. Okay, so in as much as I'm building this whole thing, let's try to make it more generic. You remember the message that was being shown on the mobile device, 192.331. it's out right here. So that would mean that if whenever you are entering your message, you would have to append that to your messages. And in that case, you would have to do something like this, and then powered by EBITS at all times. So what we can do is to make that generate as well. So we can create another private function, then call it set message, which will just pick our message, and then we will return our message with this. It's actually two new lines. Did I go off? Okay. So it's basically two new lines, and then we append powered by EBITS. So we definitely return a string, and then we can move this, and then now we can do set message, and then pass in our message, and then we will have this one there automatically. Right. So let's quickly see something. Sometimes when the user times out, when the session times out, what happens is the telcos send, or the mobile device itself, I don't know which is which, sends another request to I would say Akacel's end. And then because Akacel receives the data from the device and then sends it back to our application, whatever whatever data the user's device sends is what they send to. So that would mean that if the user is timed out, sometimes the device sends user timeout, or I think user timeout, something like this, as user data, as this, as user data here. And so that is what Akasa also sends to us. So we can work on that and say that if the request body user data, if the user data is equal to user time out, then we would want to return a response with the request body, and then say that your session has timed out. So we give them something nice to be happy about, and then we will not continue the session because it's already timed out. So this is what we can do to handle that. Now, so let's try that. I'm sure I have user timeout in here. And then now it says your session has timed out. And we have this little footer here telling us that it's powered by EBITS. Right. Sorry, I had to fix something. All right. So now let's handle the USSD codes right now. So what we are going to do is we are going to handle the first session, as in the very first session that comes to our application, to our external application. And then when we are done after that session, we are going to handle subsequent sessions. So what I try to do is what one of my bosses did, which I think is a good way to handle USSD in PHP, is that we are going to use stages. Most of the time, you may see USSD codes as a bunch of ifs and else, ifs and else, ifs and else, ifs, and then sometimes you get carried away and then you get lost in your own code. You have to search where is this particular branch of the else and all that. So what we try to do is we make it a bunch of stages, so that after stage 1, we tell the system, okay, go to stage 4. After stage 1, go to stage 2, or go to stage 5. In that way, the code becomes more readable and easy to understand, even to you. So that is what we are going to do now. Let me quickly show you what I mean by that. I already have the code here. So we have it here, and then we have our stages here. So ST1 is for stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and then because we are storing data in our cache, in this case we are using the file as the driver, so we store it in a cache, and then for the subsequent USSD sessions we retrieve the cache and then get the next stage from the data, and then this switch statement will check if the next stage is stage 1, and then it will execute stage 1. If the next stage is stage 2 or stage 3, it will execute what we have in stage 3 or in stage 4. So let me quickly show you what we have in stage 1 here. In stage 1, you see we have a bunch of codes here, but then what I want to show you is where we cache the next stage, which is stage 2. So from stage 1, we want to go to stage 2, and then we can also store a bunch of data in there and then put them all in the cache as well. So whenever the code reaches this part, it checks the next stage from the cache, and then if it's stage 2, then it runs what we have in stage 2, and then stage 2 would also return something that's okay from stage 2. Next stage is stage 3, and that is also stored in the cache, and the code will run once again after the request is received from Arcacell, and then it will know that the data or the next stage in our cache is now stage 3, so we are running stage 3. So basically that's what we are going to do from here. All right, so before then, let's create a new service. Let me call that process service. Okay, so in services, I have USSD. Oh, sorry. So in services, I have new class. So process sessions, and then in there, we are going to have, all right. So in there, we are going to have a public function called handle. Okay, so let's just do handle session. And then excuse me, give me some few seconds. Let me tackle this very quickly, else my machine will die off. Right. Thanks for hanging out, being there. Okay, so we are going to create. Okay, so I have handle session. Okay, let's do that. Handle new session, and then in there we are going to, now we have to check the election, because we are going to use the USSD to check the particular election the person dialed for. So we can say we can get election from elections, and then we can get the ongoing election using the scope I created. So if an election is ongoing, then we can continue. This will possibly not be the first, but for now, we can just leave it that way. So we can say that if election is equal to election ongoing, then we can go ahead and then continue, or else we need to return a message and then tell the person that, hey, there is no election going on. So we'll handle that later. And then in there, we can now get the person's phone number, and then the session ID from the request. We are going to use that to create a unique key for the cache. So we can just do we can just have a key equal to okay, so we need to pass our request body here as well. So request body, and then we get the MSISDN as the person's phone number, and then we can add a pipe, and then add the session ID for the session, for the USSD session. So now we have this, and then we can go ahead and then find the voter. So if the person is not a voter, then we tell the person that, hey, sorry, you are not registered to vote for this particular election you entered the code for. So we can just say voter, where the phone number of the voter is equal to request body MSISDN, and then where the election ID is equal to the election we found here. So election ID right here, and then we just fetch the first of it. So we can try this out and then see. Let's just DD voter. In the first place, let me check which election is available in my local device. Okay, so I don't have any elections. So let me quickly create one. My election, which started yesterday and will end on 26th. Right, so I was assigned this USSD extension. So I'll just use that here. And then I think I have everything right? So you just call this in our USSD session. So let's just store the results. Okay, before then, let's just call it so. Handle new USSD. Okay, so let's inject that here. So process sessions, and then we can say process sessions, handle new session, and then it requires the request body. And so in there, we are adding voter. Let's try to see what results we get. Okay, too few arguments, handle session. Okay. It looks like, let me check on that, please. And see. Okay. So we have process sessions. Okay. So process sessions, and then you can just pass process sessions here. All right, I believe it should work now. Okay, so we have now. Yes, we had now. Let's check the request. Right, and I haven't registered myself as a voter. That's why we are getting now. So quickly, let's create a voter with my name and then the phone number I used. Yes. So now I'm getting the details of the voter. And so what we can check is if we don't have the voter, then so we can say if not voter, then we can return a message. And then what we do here is, let me demonstrate that here. What we do here is that we send a response with status and then the message to take there. So the status will be either error, completed, next, or success. So what happens is that when the status received from this response is completed, we don't continue session. When the status is success, then we continue the session. However, anytime the status is success, it means the next status will be next. I'll demonstrate that right in here. So the next status will be the next, and anytime the status from this response is next, then we process the subsequent sessions. We process the subsequent sessions and we move on. So processing the subsequent sessions will possibly give us next until something shows up, and then we have to complete it or return an error. So in here, right, in here, we are going to return the status. Let's say success. Okay, if not voter, so we are going to return completed. And then the message that shows up will be, and then the message that shows up will be So we say, I'm sorry, you are not a registered voter for the for this election or something, for this election, or we can just put the election name there. So we can just do this. So election name here. And let me just make this positive so that we can now test, or I can just use a different phone number which is not registered to test, right? Okay. Okay, so now we need to store this in a response. And then now say that if the response status is equal to completed, we are using this response we have in here and say this response, we are passing in the request body, and then the message from the response we have where we did status and then message. So we get the message from there, and then because it's completed, we are setting continuous. And I think now we should have something showing. Okay, so let me check again. So let's quickly debug that response. Let's see. Okay, so completed and message, and then response. Return. We need to return it. And returning it from this handle USSD session means that it will come here, which is getting returned from handle USSD session. So now we have it, should work right. So now we have, sorry, you are not a registered voter for the elections name, which is my election, and then we have followed by EBITS. So we have that check working. And then the next thing we will do is to now get the list of positions for the person to select from. So we can do positions equal to, before then, let's quickly create a voter. Let me just do this. Let's quickly create a voter service so we can interact with it. So a voter service, because what we want to do is that we want to fetch the positions the person hasn't voted or hasn't engaged in yet. So that is what we are doing right now. So in here, we are going to have a public function called not voted positions, and just give it a new name, not voted positions. And then we will pass in the voter, and then we will also pass in the election, so we can and then get it from there. So we have voter and then elections, and then now we can check for the positions voted for, and then just filter that out. So you can just say positions voted, equal to the voter votes. We remember we created a relationship for voter and then vote. So we have positions, voter votes, and then where the election ID, is equal to the election ID, and then we are just picking the position ID from it. We only need the position ID from that, and then we might want to take it to an array. Now, let's DD this and see. Let me quickly put some dummy data in the DB. I actually didn't run any CDS, so let me just quickly do that. And we have, I think the name is my vote. Yes, so votes. So we have voter ID will be 1. So let me quickly insert a data. A voter ID 1, election ID. We haven't created any candidates. Let me just put in something there if it won't give an error. Yes, it will definitely give an error. All right, so we can just move on, and then when that is finalized, we can have it. And then now we are going to return the positions that are not in the array we have here. So now the array shape now is something like sorry, we have something like this. So we have 1 equal to, let's say, sorry, the 0th index equal to 1, and then 1 will be like 2. And then in that order. So now it means that these position IDs have been these. The person has voted for these position IDs, and for that matter, we are going to search in the database. We are going to search for positions where the IDs are not in this particular array. So we have where not in, and then we select the ID column where not in the positions voted for, and then we fetch them like this. So not voted positions will now be, let me just get that here. So I have voter service. So voter service, not voters position, not voted positions. We pass in the voter. Okay. Right. I think I'm missing a step. Let me check where this thing is. Okay, so if status is equal to completed, then that's, did I delete something? Okay, right. So that is in here. Okay, so I will need to get the voter here as well. No, yeah. So sorry about that. I should handle that in here. Right. So we get the word service here. So we have the voter, and then the next parameter is the election, which we already have here. And let me quickly add the voter service and then voter service. Right. So we are going to search for the positions that the person hasn't voted for yet. And then we can make a check and then say that if we count positions, and then positions, the count is less than 1, then it's possible the person has already voted for all the positions. So we can just return a message and say that status will now be completed because we want to end the session. And then in the message, we have there are no positions for the election name, for election name to engage or to vote in. So let's just do no remaining so that it becomes more understandable. So no remaining positions to engage. And this is what we will send to the user and then end the session. However, if this passes, then we must find a way to create a list for the person to select from. And then in doing that, we would first get positions. Let me just first start with the position string, and then make that an empty string. And then we'll fetch positions and then say that positions, for each of the positions, for each of the positions, we want to have position here. We want to have a, a list like this, where we have one, position 1, and then say 2, position 2. We want to have something like this dynamically. So what we do is we have to pass this as a reference to the callback here, and then now we can say that let's fetch the index as well, the index, which is an integer. So we fetch the index, and then we create something like position number. And because the indexes are starting from 0, we just want the index to start from 1. So we will increase it by 1 and then assign it to this. So mind you, if you do position plus plus, it means you will assign it to position number before increasing it. And for that matter, the rest of the code will have the increased value, and then position number will have the same value. So you would want to do plus plus index to get it. And then let's return the position string with now the position number. plus a dot and a space, and then we have the position itself, the name of the position, and then because this is going to be a list on a new line, we can just append a new line to it so that we have the list of positions that way. So let me try that and see if it's working. Position string. Hopefully it should work. However, let me just check if. Oh, sorry, I need to pass this as yes. So now I can see it here. All right. So let's see. Let me use my number. Okay, 2 free arguments for handle session, handle USSD session, handle USSD session, which is this. So it will be here. What is left? Okay, so we need to pass in both service. So quickly, let me just do it this way. So vote service, and then pass vote service here. Right, and so there are no remaining positions for my election to engage. I think I negated that. So let me quickly correct it. If count positions is less than 1, so not voted positions where election ID were not in. Yes. Were not in ID. Yes. And let me just do it this way. Okay, so the items are empty. So voter. All right, so let's do this. Voter. Okay, so we have voter and voter votes. Okay, so voter does not have any votes, and therefore where election ID is equal to this election ID. So if you are following, you can prompt me if I'm missing something, because I feel like I'm missing something here. All right, so let me just make a quick reference to my flow here. Okay. So if voter votes, election ID. Yes. I think this should work fine. Okay, so all right, I get it. it looks like we don't have any position. We don't have any positions in our database, right? Right. So let's quickly register a position for this. So position 1, and then create position 2 as well, and then create one candidate, Kofi, for position 1, and then another candidate, Menu, for position 1, and then create one candidate here for queer. I don't know why that name just came in, and then create another candidate for us sticking. All right, so now I believe we should have the data. Right, so now we have it this way. So we have 1, position 1, and then 2, position 2. So we are going to show this to, right. So we are going to show this to, I believe I'm still on. Yes. So we are going to show this to the user this way. So what we do is that we can say that the message we are going to return now, which is what we are going to show to the user, is this. So we are going to say status, and I will explain what I'm doing right now, status success. I will explain that very soon. And then now the message is the position string. So the position string. Or we can also say that kindly select a position to vote. And then you have a new line. And then put the position string there. So now we should have something like, I need to return that. Okay, so return this into, okay, so I need to handle that if the response status is equal to success, then we are going to return this same thing. I'll be doing more of copy paste here now because our time is almost due. So we are returning the response here like this, and we are getting we are passing the request body the response message from this response. Now it's not completed, it's success, so we need to handle that, and then we need to continue session, which will be set as true. So now that we have this, let's see, and then now we have kindly select a position to vote, position 1, position 2, which is equivalent to Functionalities 331. Say welcome to the kindly select a category to start voting, and then we have the positions listed there. Right, so now we can continue, and then what we can now do is start with the stages, start working on the stages. But before we do that, we need to save the session data plus other related data in the cache, so that whenever the request comes again, we will pick those data we already have in the cache, and then use them for whatever we want to do, because now we are not interacting with the web where we are going to store data in sessions and all that. So we need to find a way to cache the data we have. So now Laravel has a cache from the Windows support facades. So we use the cache and then put in the key. And we have already defined a key. Okay, so I'm sure there's not where I should handle that. If you are listening to some good music, that is also part of the work. Okay. Okay, so here. Right. So before we return this message to the user, we need to store the data we need in a cache. And that is what we are going to do here. So we have already defined the key for our cache here, which is the MSI SDN, and then the session, which looks this way. Let me just comment that out. And then right here, key. And let's see. So now we have the name and the phone number, and then the session ID, which is this session ID that was sent. So whenever we are making another request, we are going to use this same session ID plus this number here, and then it's going to fetch us the correct data we want, because so many people are going to dial, and then you don't want to give someone's selections or someone's data to someone else if we are talking about a secured USSD voting system. So we are going to have that here. So now our key is already key. And then the next parameter or the next bunch of parameters will be the data we want to store. We can see we have here value. So it can be anything, as you can see from here. We have the key, and then the value can actually be anything at all, because it wasn't actually even defined here. So we just put that in an array, and then we can now store the election the person selected, or the election the person wants to engage in. So we can have election, as well as the next stage we want to engage. I will talk about that soon. So for now, let me just leave it. And then we have the positions string. So let's do positions list, which will be the positions string here. And then at some point in the last stage, we would also want to fetch the positions array. So we will come back to that. And then, but for now, let's leave it this way. So we have the election and then the positions list. And then now with the stages I was talking about, this is what we are doing. Now, let me quickly go here and then demonstrate that. Okay, so you see we have status success, which I said I'll be talking about very soon. And then we have here status next. Now this is in this big if statement or if block. And what this does is we check for the user data, and then check if the particular USSD code in our case is *928 *663 663. So we use this USSD code to check if the election is active or to check if the election itself is there, and for that matter active. And so we do all these things because the election was found. Now, if we return and then the next thing the user types is not this thing, then it means this will return false, and then it will revert back to this, which now the status is next. And that is why we don't have status next here. We have status success, so that, let me go there, so that we can return the first part of the stages to the user, which will be the message from stage one, which I'll talk about very soon. The message from stage one, which I'll talk about very soon. And then we return the message. Okay, so return success and then the message. So we will have the status equal to success, and then I'll return that. Now, the next prompt, which is possibly the list of candidates or the list of positions, the person is going to select either one or two or three, and it's going to be a number, right? Which we should still account for. In that case, the person is not going to enter this. I mean, other things being equal, the person is not going to enter this. So now this will be, let's say, one. And then we will find an election which has a USSD extension of one, and then it will not be found. And therefore, we will go to next. And now the status is next. And in here, if the status is next, then we process the rest. So that is the flow. If the status is next, we process the rest. And deliberately, we make the status next when this one fails. And like I said, someone would still want to enter star 92 star in that particular box, and then in that case, it will return the same thing, which shouldn't be a problem because the person will not vote. It shouldn't be a problem, but still, these are some of the things we can improve upon, or you can improve upon as a developer in working on systems like this. So for now, you just leave it as is. So we are going to return next here. So in here, what we are going to do is, now that we have our data, all right, so let me go back to the USSD session. All right, so now we have handled the success, and therefore we should handle the next. So it should be here. That's after the if block. We are going to return next, and then status now will become next, and then we can just give it any message at all, because we are not going to display that message anyway. So just say next. And now, if after the first session is not found, then it will go to the subsequent ones. Now that brings us to the staging thing I was talking about. So how the stages work is such that we have handle this, and then now that's what I want. Okay, so handle subsequent USSD sessions from here. All right, so now this is how the stages work. So I have a stage service where the stages are defined, and then that is where the actual functionalities of that particular stage is. However, like I said, we get the next stage from the cache, and then use that in a case here. If it returns true, then we return that particular stage we want. So let's take, for instance, we want to now return the next stage to stage one. So we can just say next stage, and we are returning that to, let's say, stage 1 or ST1. So you can just use any value at all. You can even use the event that takes place at that particular stage. Let's say select candidates, and then you should know that that is the stage you are looking at. So I decide to use this. So we have the next stage, stage 1, and then we have stored that in a cache. Let's quickly define the number of seconds. I think 1,002 seconds will be fine. Yes, or let's say 1,000 seconds. It doesn't really matter. All right, so now we have this data in our cache. Let's quickly check where, or let's quickly check our data and then see what we have in there. So I will quickly copy this one and then run this again. And so let's just do that here. Cache get, and the key is this. And we have it here. So let's see. Right, so now in our cache, we have the election which we stored from here. We have the election here, which is a collection. Then we have the positions list, which is this. And then we have the next stage, which is stage 1. So now we have the data in our cache, and then we are going to use that data. I think from now I should be able to, okay, let me do one stage, and then I'll start copying and pasting codes. So I just explain because I think time is fast spent. So let me just work on one stage, and then we can do that. So let me just create a class, a service called stage service. And then in there, we are going to have a bunch of stages, which would be something like public function stage 1, and say stage 2. So stage 2 here. And then in each stage, we are going to pass the data we have from our cache and then the request body. So that is what each stage is going to receive. However, before then, we will need to define where the stages are actually called, which is this function. Excuse me for a minute. All right, so we are going to define the stages, or where the stages are actually called from. So we can have a public function, and in there, that is where we are going to define the subsequent USSD requests that come in aside this one. So this is kind of the new session, as in the very first session when someone dials, and then that session sets the next stage, which is part of the subsequent sessions, or so the subsequent sessions. So a public function where we have handle subsequent, I hope I'm getting the spelling right. Okay, USSD sessions. And in there, definitely we will pass the request body as we did here. So we will pass the request body, and then the request body is going to now use the stage in the request body to get the subsequent stage we want to handle. So let's just say, let's first get the key so that we can actually get the cache, or we can just do it straight away. So we can say that data is equal to cache get, and then now we can say the request body MSISDN dot that, and then we have the request body session ID. So now we have the data from that particular stored data in our cache, and then we can now use the switch case to, so data next stage, which I'm sure I wrote it this way. Yes, so that was next stage this way. So now in case next stage is, say, stage 1, which is what we have already defined here. So in case the next stage is stage 1, then we want to call the particular stage. So now we already have the stage service here where the stages are defined. So we will, let me inject that here, and stage service. So now we call stage service stage 1, and that's it. So we will do that for all the other stages. So stage 2, and then we would also do it for stage 3. For now, let's just have it up to stage 3. Yes, okay, so that's because we don't have anything here. It's actually a void function. All right, and like I said, we have to pass in the data we have here to it, and then the request body as well, because we'll be using the phone numbers and then the session IDs in there as well. And then we would also need the data we have already cached on the system, or on our file system inside the stage as well. So we would need to get data and then request body here. So we'll be doing that for each of the stages. And then now we can say that in stage 1, let's just return, let me make this a public function. Okay, it doesn't really matter, but let's make it public so that I can okay, so make it private. And then this is stage 1. And so let's start from here. So we have kindly select a position. So now the user data is no longer going to be this, but it's this one. So I'm selecting position 1, and then in there it should take me, okay, so position one story. Okay, let me, all right. Position one. Okay. Data next stage. All right, so let me get data and see. All right, I don't think I have called this. So that will be here, USSD session service. And like I rightly said, if now the response, the status from the first session is equal to next, then we want to handle the new sessions. So we will have process sessions and then handle subsequent sessions, which requires the request body, and then stage service, which we don't have here. So stage service, and then get stage service here. Right, so I'll just return that. Yeah, and hopefully, let me start. Okay. Handle USSD session. Okay. Okay, so stage service. Then the stage service. All right. So now we have this, and then let me just select position one. Okay, and it's still that. So let's do response. Okay, so that means it doesn't get in here. Let's do this. Okay. So let's go in there and check. Success. And then we are checking if it's equal to success. And then if it's equal to success, continue session. And then now the next one should check for election. Oh, okay. So I think this is always going to return true because an election is ongoing. So it's definitely going to return true. So we need to set an event where, or an election where the USSD code is equal to the request body user data, which in this case will be star 928 star star whatever. Okay, 663. Yes. So now hopefully it should skip this because when you select, when you have, so now let me just remove the okay. All right. So now the first one should work, giving us this, and then the next one by selecting position one, good. Now should take us to this part. So that is handle subsequent, right? So I just did this. let's remove it and then run it again. So now we see this is stage one. So successfully we have created one stage, and then what happens in the stage one is basically what happens in here, because this is kind of the initial stage or the init stage. So not exactly as what happens in here, but I mean the flow. So you do all your checks, and then you store some data, and then you go to the next stage. You store some data, you go to the next stage, and then you make some other checks based on the user's input. You store some data, you go to the next stage. So basically, that is what the staging is all about. You create your stages here, or you can just create another service and then handle this switching there. So you just call it once from here, based on the let's say the something else you can use to check that. So for the rest of the stages, let me just do something in stage one, so we will know what really happens in there, and then we will leave the rest for copy and paste, which is a very nice feature in computing. So in stage one, let's first get our key. Let's just store the key somewhere because we are going to need it. So um, we will get the key from, I feel like I should create something to get the key here. So let's say process sessions. I have a public function called get key, and then we would only pass in the request body, and then we are going to return this, and then in here we can say that get key request body, and then it should return the key for us. So I can then call that process sessions. No, not here. Okay, so let me do that from here, or else I would have to inject that in every bit of the code here. So let me just create a construct and then pass it in there as process sessions. So process sessions, and then I can have a private process sessions here, and then now I can call process sessions get key request body. Okay, so now I have the key. Then this particular stage is supposed to show us the list of candidates based on the position that the person selected. If you remember, based on the position the person selected, because the person must have selected position one, and then we are going to list the candidates for position one in the next stage. So we will need positions here, and then the positions is already defined in the data, where in this case the data is, where is that? Where in this case the data is, oh, did I just get the key? Okay, so yes, so it's the cache. Okay, so I must have misused that. So let me just refactor. It's supposed to be get cache data or something. So get cache data. Okay, so it looks like we need to find another way to get the key. That notwithstanding, okay, let me just copy this for time factor and then just put it here. Okay, so now we are sure data is the cached data we have. So we have data positions because we have already stored positions. Okay, we didn't. So now let's store positions. Positions, and we already have it here. So it's easy to just show it in here. Positions. So now we have the positions data available for the next stage. And then for the position, we can just find the selected position out of the positions the person. Yes, so that is where the positions array comes in, I guess. So these are positions, and I think positions now is a collection. This is a collection. So we need to store the exact um, array that was displayed to the person. So let's do it this way because now the person is seeing, okay. So now the person is seeing one position one and then two position two. The person selected one. These are not the IDs for the position in the database. They are just something we give the person to select. So in that case, we would have to get the same list and then save that same list so we can get the position the person selected. So the positions array, we can just show it in here as well, like this. Positions array. Before then, let's pass that as reference here. Positions array, and then now we have positions array, and then we get the index, which is incremented by 1, equal to the position itself. We can just use position number since, I mean, else it will just be a waste of memory. Okay, so we have this, and then now we can save that instead in here. So we can save the positions array as the positions. And then now when we fetch the positions here, what we want to do is to get the selected position based on the user's input. So now we can have selected position equal to, okay, it's 8:30. Selected position is equal to the positions at the index of the person's data, which is the user data. So now user data will say now be 1, and then 1 will be we are going to use that particular one to check or to fetch the 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 respective position whose index is 1, because we have already defined the indexes here. Let me Okay, process sessions. We have already defined the indexes here as the position numbers. So the person will enter just the number, and we use that number the person entered to check for the position. So that is it, to get the position the person selected. And then from there, and then from there, right, right. Okay. Right. Right. Sorry about that. So the next thing we will do is to get the candidates for that particular position the person selected. And that is what we are going to do. So we can say candidates equal to selected position, and then we have already defined candidates, a candidate's relationship for position, in which case this position we are finding here is the actual position. That's why it's actually a collection. That's why we can call the relationship on, because we have the positions array, the position number to an actual position here. And that's why we can just call the candidates on. So let me DB here. And I am thinking that maybe we can end here and then continue some other time, and possibly have the codes available. I don't know if my bosses would agree on that. So stage service, line 17 on stage service, line 17, data positions, let me say undefined array key positions. Okay, yeah. So I need to start afresh, and then now we have the data in there, and then now we should have, right. So now we have the candidate list. Let me put that in an array so it will be easier to read. Right. So now we have the list of candidates, that is Kofi, and then menu for that particular position, which I think is position 1. So we have Kofi and then menu. And then now we can take it from there. Then we can also check. So some of the things we can do is we can check if there are no candidates in there. Then we tell the person, okay, there are no candidates defined for this particular position. So we return the status completed, and then we return a message indicating that there are no candidates defined for that particular position. And then we end the session from there. Then when we are done, just as we defined the list of positions here, you can also define the candidates the same way. So I wouldn't import that, but I would do candidates. Like I said, I'll be doing a bit of copy and paste. So candidates, and then let me just refactor this. Candidate. Right. Now, so candidates. And candidates has name. So let's see if we have the candidates we want, the candidate string. So now it should change from an array to the string. So now we have Kofi and then menu, just as we want it. And with this, what we are going to show to the user. And before we show that, we will just have to store the data we have here, because we already have it in there. We are kind of updating it because we are going to use the same key, and then we are kind of adding new values to it. So we can do cash put. We can do cash put. We already have the key, which is here. So cash put, and then our data, which we already have from here. This is the already cached data. So we are going to save the same thing. However, we need to add new items to it. So now we can say data next stage. Now we are going to indicate the next stage we want to go to. So next stage is ST2. And I'm sure now you are getting the idea. And then now we can store the candidates. The candidates as the candidates array, because we will definitely need it elsewhere, and then store the candidates list as well. So let me just do this. So candidates list, and then get the candidate string. And then we should also store the selected position. I'm sure we are going to need it. Yeah, selected position, and then save that data, including the previous ones plus the updated ones in our cache. So now that we are done, let's quickly update it to, let's say, 1,000 seconds. And now that we are done, we now return. So after this, I'm sure we may have to end it because of our time. All right, so now we have the status, and the status is going to be next because we want to go to the next stage. So next, and then message is equal to let's say kindly select a candidate for, let's just say, position, selected position, and let's get the name from the selected position. So kindly select a candidate to vote as the position name or something, and then we return that. So let me just click this, and hopefully we shouldn't find any issue. So stage 2. I'm not sure we have stage 3 defined yet, so let's just do it this way. To data and request body. So in stage 2, let's just return. This is stage 2. Right, so let's see what we've done so far. Let's see what we've done so far. So please select a position to vote, and then we are selecting position, the first one. So kindly select a candidate to vote. Okay, I think we didn't add the candidates, so which is a new line, just a new line, and then candidate string. All right, so let's run that once again. And now okay, I think I had already selected the candidates for that. Okay, so now I'm selecting position 1, So it says, kindly select a candidate to vote as position 1, which is what we have here. And then we have the list, Kofi, and then menu. And then now we select Kofi, which is 1, or let's select menu, which is 2. And then before then, let me just do return. Let me just do this dd data. Okay, so let's just return the data so that we can at least see what we have. So this is it. And then we have the election in there, which is still in there, although we didn't add it here, but it's still part of the data from the very first, the initial stage. So we have election, we have the positions. Now we have I see some auto loading here, and then we have the positions list, which we defined, and then the next stage, which is now stage 2, and then the list of candidates, and then the candidates list, and then the selected position, which we defined here. So basically, that's how we go about it. And then in each stage, you check the user data, you get your key, you use the key to get the data from the cache, and then use the data from the previous stage. For example, in the initial stage, we selected the position, so we use the selected position, which is from the previous cache we had, or the previous data we had in our work here. In the same way, we are going to use the selected candidate to process the next stage. And then after that, we can move to the stage 4. So let me quickly take you through that here. So in stage 2, we have the key here, and then the list of candidates that is from the previous stage, which is here from stage 1, right here. And then, all right, so here is stage 2. And then we get the selected candidates using the user inputs, using that as the to fetch the selected candidates using the index, yes. And then if we find the selected candidates in the list of candidates, then we move on to stage 3, or we set the next stage to stage 3, and then we keep the selected candidates data in the cache as well, and then store the cache. And then now we will get the position, because we are going to use the position to build a message. With this particular one, I used get next stage message, which is basically a list of messages for each stage. So I also use the sprint F to format the string using the templates here. So we get stage 3's message, and we ask, are you sure you want to vote the person's name, which is the selected candidate's name, for this is supposed to be the position, and that's why we had to fetch the position here. And we have 2 go back to candidate selection, and then 3 go back to position selection. And then if the person accepts and then selects yes, which will be in stage 3, that is here. If the person accepts and then selects yes, then the actual voting will be done, and then it will take the person to stage 4, which will then calculate the remaining positions the person is supposed to vote for, as we saw in the demonstration on the demo I did at the start of this whole thing. and then we also cache the data we need to cache, as in the remaining the remaining positions and all that. And then we display the message from stage 4, which is we have successfully voted the person's name, the candidate's name here for the position here, and then we say continue. That's one, continue. This one here is supposed to be the remaining positions which we have here. So we have remaining positions which we are counting here, and then to exit. If the person selected 2 here, as in back to candidate selection, then we simply return to stage 2. So that is one of the advantages of using the stages approach. You can just shove in any stage, just move to any stage without hassle, because you don't have to write a long if else, if else, if statements in there. So now we'll just go back to stage 2, where stage 2 will just display a list of the candidates for the position. That is back to candidate selection, or back to position selection, which will take the person to stage 1, which is here, which will take the person to stage 1, where it will display the list of positions or the categories. And then if everything is successful, if the person did not select 2 or 3 to go back to any of these and actually voted, then it will take the person to stage 4, which is this. And then stage 4, like I have already explained, has this message: you have successfully voted. So we count the remaining messages, the remaining positions which we stored here, which we stored in the previous stage. We count them and see if there are any left. If there are any left, if there are none left, let me start from there. If there are none left, then we say that thank you for exercising your right, sit tight and expect results. So you have finished voting. But then if there is still more, then you are definitely going to see this continue, blah, 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 and then exit. And so if you select continue, which is 1 from here, continue, which is 1, then it's going to take you to stage 1 again, and we have to do some stuff here just so we get the right positions to list there. So we are going, and we can just put these ones in separate functions or methods, which could be called anytime we want them. So we go to stage 1, and then stage 1 is supposed to list the categories or the positions for us. And if 2, then we tell the person, okay, thank you for exercise. 2 means exit. We tell the person, thank you for exercising your right, and you still have this number of positions to vote. That is if the position count is greater than 0, and you may dial again at any time between now and the end of the elections date to complete voting. If not, then we will just display this message like thank you for exercising your right. But if this is, then the message will be we will have this concatenated to the thank you for exercising your right, and then we will be good to go. So basically that is it. So before I okay, so I have a bunch of calls here. Before I end, the code will be made available, and let me try one more time and try to vote so that we then we select treasurer, and we want to vote for Nicholas, or let's say George Meth. I don't know where I got those names from. And okay, so are you sure you want to vote JobNet for treasurer? We can go back to candidate selection, or we can go back to position selection and then possibly select another position. So let's now vote for Appear Kubi, who is fortunate. So yes, and then you have successfully voted Appear Kubi for organizer. Do you want to continue as in I have one position still remaining, or exit? So let's just say I have one position remaining, so I want to do that as well, and then vote for the treasurers. So let me vote for JobNet, who I first wanted to vote for. So yes, okay. So I think that this is one part of the flow that I need to work on. So I would just say continue, and I'm sure it's going to tell me, okay, so that's where the thank you for exercising your right to tight and expect results comes in. All right. So basically that is it. I just hope I'm still on. And if there are any questions or any contributions as to how the code was written and how we can improve upon it and all that, we can share. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kingsford. So to all attendees, I want to apologize for the delay in time. So from what we can see, we could see that the project that we are currently working on is quite extensive. That is what has sort of delayed us to this point. At this juncture, if there's any question that anybody wants to ask, you can raise your hand in Teams, and then your microphone will be unmuted so that you can make your submission. Is there any question from anyone? Okay, see your hand. You can go ahead, Michael.
All right, good evening.
Okay.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Michael.
All right. So, thank you so much for the presentation. That was such a great one. But personally, I felt like some people would have been lost because of the stack that you used. You used Laravel, right? PHP.
Yeah.
Because myself, I'm not really a PHP developer, so I was following with your explanation, not entirely the codes. So I think if we had the probably a flow diagram or maybe any diagrams to, for example, where you were explaining the entities and the tables and stuff, if we had a diagram to show the actual relationships and then the cardinality, I think that will help us who don't really understand the Laravel framework. Yeah, I think that was quite a challenge for me. And I want to ask whether the API for setting the categories are also available, because I think the one you presented was the one that actually the user, the one that the user will hit for the voting. You didn't really touch on the API for setting the categories and assigning the members and all that, the voters, the people that will be voted for and all that. Is that one also available? That's an application that will be made available to anyone, to a developer who subscribes to the API. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let me touch on that. In the first place, I acknowledge the first statements you made about the trying to make everyone understand in their own field. I actually apologize for that. Hopefully next time we can work in that accord. So what happens is that I had already worked on those ones just for the time's sake. So I didn't really, maybe I should have touched on that. I didn't really explain it. So for example, this is where we create the elections using this store method. This is where we create the elections. This is where we actually display the data for elections, edit elections, update elections, the positions here, creating positions like so here, and then updating positions and deleting positions and all that. So as per what I have done in this application, the positions are straight away tied to the election. In the same way, the candidates, where is that? The candidates are also tied straight away to the position. So it's like the candidates for that position. So we don't create the candidates and then later on assign them to positions. So that's what I did. I'm sorry, I'm sure I should have touched on these ones, but I got carried away. So the code is there, it's written from scratch like this. It's not a subscribed service or anything like that. I believe I answered your question.
Sure.
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think the next person is on the Mr. Joseph.
Richard, you can go ahead. Hello, Richard. I've unmuted your mic, so you can go ahead and speak. Okay. Is there anybody else? Okay. So without any further submissions from the okay, Richard. Please go ahead.
Yes, please. I came late, and then for the first lectures, I wasn't able to join, and so I'm a bit confused. No, I'm okay with what is going on, but I would want to go through the first stages, and then probably the software we are using. And then we are using the PHP, Java.
Right. Okay. So Rich, all right. In the first place, we are using PHP on Laravel, and Laravel is a framework for PHP. So that's what we are using for this particular application, and it's currently running on the PHP 8.1, and the entire application is actually a voting system using USSD, and then this is the entire application. In the front end part of it, where we have active elections, total candidates, and all that, where we have the votes here. Let me get on the online part so I can see these ones. Right. So we have the votes and then the votes per candidate per position also here as well. You can create multiple elections. Each of them will be assigned a different USSD extension, and that is what is used to get the particular election someone wants to vote in. And before that, the person must be a registered voter for that particular election, or else when the person dials, yes, or else when the person dials, it will tell the person you are not a registered voter for, let's say, SRC election 2024. The elections have start dates and end dates, and it means that after this end date, no one can vote again. So the positions are tied to the elections. So you click on positions, we have president, secretary, treasurer, organizer, and then position new, which we just created. You can create new positions here. And then the candidates are also tied to the individual positions. So for example, we have candidates for president, and then we have Kofi Numeri Advice and Dan King. And then this one here is just displaying the number of votes they have as per how the voting has been. And you can also add images to that. So basically that's it for the basic idea of the system. And then what happens next is the part for the users or the voters to vote, which is handled by the USSD processes I took us through. So basically that's it. I don't know if you are kind of okay or would still want further explanation.
Sir, I would appreciate if I can reach you on WhatsApp so that I mean whenever there's a difficulties I could reach you very easily.
Right. I will put my number out here. Okay, so I'm not sure I can chat in here. Can I chat, Mr. Joe? Yeah. I actually wanted to type in my number, but then for anyone listening, so if you are ready, you can just type somewhere or then write it somewhere.
All right. All right. So.
Yeah, so it's 055
55.
Yeah, 055 452 4532.
Please come again. 055
452.
Okay, 554.
Yes, I think. Yeah, Mr. Duga has posted it in the chat, so you can fetch it from there.
0554 5
2 4 5 3 2
5 3 2 554. 5 5 2 4 5 3 2. Okay, so then we call you then. Thank you so much.
Right. You're welcome, boss.
Okay, so I take it that we are all satisfied and there are no further submissions at this point. Once again, we apologize for the time taken to this point. So how we will do is this meeting has been recorded, it will be processed and then uploaded to our YouTube channel. The source code will be prepared and then made available on a GitHub repository for those who might have interest in the source files as well. I think we have Grace on the call, so Grace would give us our final remarks. Hello, Grace. Are you with us now?
Hello, Joseph. Kindly come again. I didn't get you.
Yes, so we are done. Could you give us our closing remarks?
Okay, sure. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all those who join in and stay till the end. We will be uploading this recording on YouTube. And once we do that, we will share the link with each and every one of us here. Like I said earlier, this happens on the third Thursday of every month. So kindly stay tuned and watch out for our emails or SMS or social media posts informing you of the next webinar. The details would come out very soon. Thank you very much once again. Have a good night. And thank you, King, for the wonderful tutorials. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We hope to have more partnership like this as well. Please enjoy the rest of your night. Bye.
All right. Thank you too. Bye.
All right.